Hi guys, and welcome back to my podcast. Welcome to the Differently More podcast. I am super grateful that you're tuning in wherever you're tuning in from. If it's from YouTube or from any other listening platform for podcasts, I'm super grateful. And I honestly feel like this episode is going to be really helpful to a lot of us, really healing for a lot of us, because it's truly what I would have hoped to find online 3 months ago when I was going through my breakup and I was really in the midst of it and everything was really painful, really raw. And I was just I felt like I was just going through a storm with no clear direction, no clear understanding of like what to do, how to heal, all of these things. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm choosing to be vulnerable online to help you guys and give you kind of a step-by-step approach of a potential healing journey to heal your heart after heartbreak. Because honestly, people that have gone through heartbreak know how difficult of a process it is and how challenging of a process it is, and just that it feels very lonely. And sometimes you feel like you just desperately want an answer. You just desperately want to have somebody that's going to tell you that it's going to be okay and that it's going to show you the way to healing and show you the way to feeling better. Because when you're really in the thick of it, it feels almost like it's never ending. The pain is so brutal, it's so visceral that it really takes you at your core, and you really feel like, goodness gracious, how am I going to get out of this alive? How am I going to get out of this thriving? Because I don't just want to survive, I want to thrive. So today's episode is me giving you a step-by-step approach as to how to heal your heart after heartbreak. All of this is based on what I've personally done. I'm just over 3 months and a half post-breakup now, and I feel so much better. I feel like I've honestly healed a lot of it. I don't know if anything will come up again. It could be, but I really feel so much more secure in myself. I feel so much better, basically. I've never felt this good in my life. And so that's why I'm filming this podcast today and recording this podcast today, because I feel like I'm in the right headspace to talk about this with you guys and to help you as much as I can on this journey. So as I said, it's going to be kind of a step-by-step approach as to how to heal your heart after heartbreak. I think we have about 7 different steps today, but again, these are in a certain chronological order. But please, with this podcast and with everything I do, I don't want you guys to just blindly listen to what I say just because some random girl on the internet said it. Please still use your intuition. Please still use what you think feels good to you. All of these steps are stuff that I've noticed because I've just followed my own path while I was going through my heartbreak. Yes, I would have loved to have somebody to lay these steps out for me because it would have been really nice. I wouldn't have had to feel as lost and as confused. But these are, again, just my steps. And if they don't feel too good to you, if you want to do them in different order, if you want to add a different step before that one, just take what resonates, make it your own. That's what I want to do with this podcast. I don't want anybody to just follow my advice blindly. Still follow your own advice and your own inner authority before anybody else on this world, okay? So let's start with this. Short little story, just again to put all of us on the same page. So about 3 months ago, I went through a really horrible breakup. I was not prepared for it. I was not expecting it. It really came out of the blue, and I was very quickly thrown very deeply into the deep end. Not eating, not sleeping, sad all the time, and just really feeling like I had fully lost a part of myself. And it was the most acute pain I felt in my whole life, really, truly. Yeah, and it was really not fun at all. And I now can fully empathize with people that are going through really tough breakups, really tough relationship issues that cause people to separate, because it is one of those things in life that is very difficult to go through, because it almost causes an identity crisis once the person has left, or if you're kind of like, okay, like, who am I now? So that's kind of the story as to why I feel like I have things to say about this topic and ways to help you guys to heal with this. So I'm going to be walking you guys through a bunch of 7 different steps, and we're going to start now with step 1. And step 1 is what I'm going to call feel and grieve. It's the first step that is important to do the moment you go through the breakup. So the moment, if you decide to break up, if they decide to break up, just the moment that it becomes very clear that this relationship is over, that's when step 1 starts. It's the feeling and grieving process of fully accepting all of the emotions that flow through you. You see, I would not be standing here today feeling so good, feeling so healed, feeling so peaceful, talking to you guys if I hadn't gone through step 1. So every single step that I tell you kind of layers one on top of each other, and only move on to the next step. Again, follow your own authority, but only move on to the next step when it feels right and you feel like you've gone deep enough. But also, sometimes you might have to come back to step 1 because there's something else now to feel or to grieve that you hadn't noticed until you got into step 3 of the process, for example. And that definitely happened to me when I thought that I was feeling a lot better, and then I had to go back to step 1 and feel and grieve something else that I hadn't noticed before, and spend hours crying and grieving that specific thing that I hadn't noticed, I hadn't processed yet. But the fundamental first step of healing, of starting to heal after a breakup, I would say, is to feel and grieve. So allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to be confused, allow yourself to really sink into those emotions. And as much as these emotions are super, super, super hard to accept, they're super hard to have, you know what I mean, to hold, because they hurt, they really take you at your core, at your gut, and it really, it's so painful. They still are there to teach you something, and you still have to let them flow through you. You still have to feel them all, because if you decide to reject step 1 and not feel anything and not grieve anything, you're not going to be able to move on to the other steps with peace and grace, because you're going to have this in the back of your mind, stored somewhere in your body as some sort of mini trauma of like, I haven't processed this feeling. I haven't processed how sad I felt. I haven't processed how angry I felt. And when I say feel and grieve, all breakups are different. Every single person goes through a very different breakup, and very different emotions are involved. So some people might be super angry and they have to release all of that anger. Other people might be super sad, super confused, like super lost. Like whatever it is that your body is feeling, allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to sink into it. And as tough as it is, just let it stay there. Let it sit with you, and then let it flow out of you. Whatever you decide to do, and I'm going to do other podcast episodes of ways to have ways to process emotions and let them flow through you and then back out. But like things like dancing, singing, journaling, all of these things are modalities that can help you to flow through difficult emotions with a bit more grace. So step 1, feel and grieve. And I honestly think it's the most fundamental step. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't sat for a week or 2 weeks with all of these emotions and super, super intense feeling of like, wow, I'm processing so many emotions and I'm letting them flow through me. A thing that is important as well, I remember I wasn't eating. I stopped eating. I was so deeply, deeply emotional and sad that food was the last thing that was on my mind. And I remember telling my mum about it, and I was like, Mama, like, I'm not even eating. Like, what is this on about? Like, I'm normally somebody that loves to eat. I love my food. It's amazing. But I wasn't eating anything at all. And my mum was like, hey, Helen, like, it's the same thing as when you're ill. When you're ill, you're not eating because your body is busy, you know, helping you heal and helping you fight this bug. Right now, your body is busy helping you process all of these emotions. So don't force your body to eat. Don't force your body to do anything else. Listen to what your body needs right now. And what your body needs right now is to process those emotions and for you to sit with them and to let them flow through you. So that's step 1, feel and grieve. Really a process of going back into your body and allowing yourself to process all of those difficult, big emotions. I would say that that's step 1. Step 2 is, I think, when you've gone through this sort of feeling and you start to feel a little bit lighter, because every time you process a big emotion a little bit, it almost as if it kind of liberates you as well. So you process something really strong, it goes through you, you're crying, you're angry, you're frustrated, you feel all tight, and then the moment it exits your body, it's almost as if you have you're a little bit lighter and you feel a little bit better. But obviously it has to happen for you to feel like fully like, okay, I've let this thing go. So step 2 is to accept the healing process and focus on you. And the reason why I say that is because the first few weeks of being in a breakup and going through a breakup, you're probably not going to be thinking, oh, I'm just going to focus on me and I'm going to like slay the day away or whatever. You're probably going to be like, are we going to get back together? Is he coming back? Like, was that about? Like, are we like going to get back together? I'm so confused. Like, is this really the end, or is this just a break? Like, so you're going through all of these emotions. So you're still kind of in a state of processing things as like, you're still within the relationship unit and trying to maybe make it work a little bit. But at some point, you have to move on to step 2 and be like, you know what? Right now, I'm going to accept this healing process and I'm going to focus on me. Because I think the faster you accept, the faster you realize that going through this healing process and focusing on you is vital to your healing journey and to healing your heart. It's vital to your growth. The faster you realize as well that this is going to get you to the next stage of life. So if you decide to fully shut off and not heal and decide to just stay within this sort of like feeling and grieving and just within the relationship and like, oh my God, like are we going to get back together, and hyper focusing on the relationship as a thing rather than starting to focus and extract yourself from the relationship unit and back as an individual, then you're not going to start healing, you're not going to start growing, and you're not going to get to the next stage of life. Take every breakup as something that's meant that's there to help you grow and help you learn something that is vital for you to get to the next stage of life. And some people break up and they get back together. It happens. But for them to break up and get back together, they need to go through accepting the healing process and focusing on them as well to then get back together in a more healthy way, right? Nobody can get back together with their ex from a point of we're the exact same people and we're just going to try to make something work that we know is not working, but we're sticking to it and we're trying to make it work just because we're too scared on ever healing, and we're too scared on focusing on us because we don't want to be alone, right? That's not how it works. People still have to separate. People still have to go their separate ways, accept their own healing journeys, heal on their own, and then maybe they come back together. And maybe they don't. But even if you don't, you're still going to be a more healed version of you that has learned so many things. And so you can bring all of this to your next relationship that will inevitably be much better than the one that you've had like just before, right? So the second step I think is also crucial, accepting the healing journey and focusing on you. Honestly, at some point you have to be like, okay, I've grieved, I've done as much as I could on that. Now it's time to start slowly moving on to the next step and extrapolate myself from this relationship as a unit and focus back on the individual, okay? Because again, deciding not to focus on you right now might seem like the easier option, deciding to, go drink or do whatever to distract yourself might seem like the simpler option right now, but it will come back to bite you. It will come back. You cannot get to the next step of your life if you haven't focused and you haven't worked through what it was that you had to learn through this thing. Because if you're not going to do it now, you can have to do it in 5 years. You're only delaying the moment where you're going to have to sit down with those uncomfortable emotions and learn and start the healing process. There's just no way, really truly, there's no way that you can go through a breakup without going through that healing process. It doesn't happen. It's not possible. And then the other thing as well is that if you think about what a breakup happens when two people that used to be connected physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of the leads, very, very connected, decide to separate. But it's not because you've made that intellectual decision that we're separating that the body is separated, right? You're still going to be walking in life feeling like, oh, why is it that I'm not sleeping next to this guy tonight? Like, I don't understand. So your body's still going to be in a sense of trying to understand what's happening, processing as well. You're processing a lot of different things. You're processing things in your mind and understanding things, but your body as well is processing in different ways, right? Realizing like, oh, I'm not sleeping to someone every night anymore, or like, oh, like I'm not going to get that person's humor anymore in my life. Things like that. Like, all of these things have to be processed, and for them to be processed, you have to start focusing on you and noticing and sitting into those like uncomfortable emotions. So I think this kind of element of the second step of accepting the healing process and focusing on you is almost as if the second step is not something you might, I think there's two categories of people. Some people might feel like, okay, I felt and I've grieved enough. Now I'm moving on to step 2. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to start my healing process and I'm going to do it properly. That's first group of people. Another group of people might be like, okay, you know what? I know that I'm a feeler. I know that I'm going to grieve forever and ever and ever and ever. And I don't want to stay in this energy for too long. I'm going to feel the most that I can, but I don't want to stay here for like 3 months and being in the feeling and the grieving and being sad. Like, I don't got any business to be sad for 3 months. So you can put a timeline on it being like, okay, by 2 weeks, I'm going to start intentionally me. I'm going to intentionally start the healing process and focusing on me. I'm going to, from 2 weeks, 2 weeks after the breakup, now it's my time to be like, okay, Alan, we're focusing on us. We're focusing on our healing and starting to intentionally do that. So you can be in 2 different groups. You can decide which group you're in if you know that at one point you're just going to feel the click being like, it's time to focus on me. Or if at some point you're going to have to kind of like nudge yourself a little, be like, no, now it's time to focus on us, like enough of focusing on this guy, on this girl, or whatever, or whoever it is, okay? And for this step as well, I think that there's 2 different ways of focusing on you, depending on at what point of the healing journey you're at, okay? If you're still on the SOS mode, the mode of like, you're still really, really, really like the wound, let's take the image of a wound. Let's say you had a wound here, like the heartbreak wound is still very, very much open. It's still oozing and there's no protection on it whatsoever. There's no scar, there's no protection whatsoever. It's just there, like out in the open. So if you get any like drop of water on it, it's still gonna hurt, right? If you're still at this point of like critical acute heartache, I think that the focusing on you bit is like focusing on you at the most fundamental level. Start cooking food for yourself. Go out with your friends. Prioritize your time alone. Do things that feel good to you and that feel good to your body. You know, make your mind feel good, read a good book, watch a nice movie. So just do things that you know for a fact will make you feel good. If you're like a really active, like you love sports and you love exercise, go outside, go play football or something. If you're somebody that's like very artistic, paint, do whatever it is that you know at your core as a person will make you feel good, because that's something that's always made you feel good in the past, okay? That's kind of the SOS, like your wound is still like out in the open. Once the wound has started to heal a little bit and you know that, you know, your heart is slowly starting to heal and it's slowly starting to process things, these things, you can feel them when you're starting to feel better. You can realize like, oh, I'm not as like reacting about it. It's not as like fresh. So when the wound starts to heal a little bit, and obviously like, you know, if somebody hits on it, like it's obviously still going to hurt. But if a bit of water comes on it, you're fine. Like you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that there was water on this wound. So at this point in time, when you're starting to feel better, I think the focusing on you should be on more fundamental things. Okay, now that I've healed a lot more of like the very acute things, focusing on you maybe will look like more of like, okay, what is it that I want to do with my life now? Now that I'm single, now that I don't have a man, now that I don't have a woman, what is it that I want to do for myself? What is it that I actually want to do with my life? Do I want to start anything new? Do I want to start a YouTube channel? Do I want to actually work out a bit more now? Do I want to see my friends more? Like, do I want to upgrade my circle of friends? Do I want to get out more? Do I want to paint? So at this point in time, it's a bit more of like, okay, now that I feel better and that I have all of this time and I'm kind of in this new phase of life where I get to be single and I get to like have no responsibility for anyone apart from myself, what is it that I truly desire? Because sometimes in relationships, you mix and you mend with someone so much that your desires become theirs and theirs becomes yours, and you get out of the relationship and you're very much like, okay, like, who am I? What is it that I actually want? I'm very, very confused now. So in this second step, when you're focusing on you and you're starting to feel better, start thinking a little bit as to what it is that you want to do with your life. Where is it that you want to take your life independent of anybody else in your life? Okay, so I feel like I stayed on step 2 for a very long time, but it's because step 2 really is the tipping point as to someone that's going to go through a breakup and heal relatively fast, and someone that's going to go through a breakup and take very long to heal, because they stay in the feeling and the grieving and they don't intentionally choose to extract themselves from the unit and become an individual again and focus on themselves. I really think that whenever you make that decision in step 2 to start focusing on yourself, that's when the whole snowball starts moving and you start to properly heal and, you know, evolve and grow in a way that gets exponential with time. But if you don't make that decision, it's not gonna go as fast, and it's gonna be very, very slow and very like, you know, oh yeah, I'm feeling a bit better, but it's been 6 months, like I'm still not ready to date again. Like, you know what I mean? Like that second step is like kind of the tipping point, the decision point of like, okay, now I'm healing and now I'm doing whatever it takes to heal my heart and feel better and grow and understand what happened there. Now we can move on to step 3, which I think is quite important as well. Is when you've started this whole like process of, you know, focusing on you and everything, you're still going to be processing emotions, right? The feeling and the grieving is not going to stop for a while. But step 3 is when you've started to feel better and you feel healed enough, It's the point in time when you have to forgive them. Forgive them. And that's difficult. It's a difficult process because it doesn't feel nice to forgive somebody that probably hurt you. It's not great. But know that the reason why you're doing that is because for forgiving somebody that hurt you actually liberates yourself. If you stay in this energy of like holding on to the anger, holding on to like, not wanting to forgive them, then you're actually doing yourself a disservice because you're still allowing a part of your energy to go to them, right? Because you're still like, oh, and so I know they did this and they cheated on me and like, oh, like how dare they, la 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 la, or like whatever it is, whatever that they've done. So it's really, really, really important that at some point, whenever you feel ready, whenever you feel called to forgive them and intentionally do that, because it will allow yourself to not only reclaim all of your energy back to you, but it also will allow you to detach from the situation. Because at this point, when you've forgiven someone, it doesn't mean that you've forgotten. It just means that, okay, I've forgiven you. Like, you've done this, you've hurt me, you've done all of these things that were not great, but I forgive you. And now I can also move on because I'm not attached to the pain that you've caused to me and the anger that how dare you do that to me. I'm taking my power back. You've done that to me. That's okay. That was your decision. That's okay. I've forgiven you, and then you move on. And I think a way sometimes to do that is to think about the fact that they've acted in the best way that they probably could at the time with their headspace. Obviously, if somebody really treated you really, really, really badly, that there's no way to excuse that behavior at all. But it's coming from a place of understanding that, you know what, if they've treated me badly, it comes from a reflection of how they feel in their own hearts about their own selves, right? Somebody that has such a pure heart, that loves themselves so much, they love themselves so deeply that they would never want to treat somebody in a way that doesn't resemble love at all, right? So if you have somebody that, like, let's say, cheated on you, it reflects more on them than it ever will on you, because they've decided to run away from their issues and not face things. And obviously you were damaged in that, like, you were hurt by that, but it's almost as if it's not nice to say, but it's almost as if you were collateral damage of their own pain within their own hearts and their own minds. And that, like, that pain was never actually directed to you. It was more that person is hurting, and so they don't know what they're doing, and so they're all over the place, and you ended up being collateral damage. And so sometimes accepting that a person acted from a place of probably them as well not being healed, and also sometimes from a place of hurting within themselves, and that's why they hurt you. Sometimes that could help, obviously not always, but I'm just saying things that could resonate with some people. And then the other thing as well that I think could help you to actually do this process of forgiving them is to write them a letter, write them a letter, dear whoever, and express how you felt through the breakup and tell them, yeah, like, whatever you've done, like, I forgive you. And coming from a place of that's fully your heart, doing this step has to be properly coming from a place of like, you're ready to do this, you're ready to forgive them. And when you're writing this letter, it really comes from your heart. And obviously you're not going to send them to them. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't. You're not going to send it to them. So you can either break it up and then throw it in the bin. You can burn it. Obviously be careful with the fire. Like, you can do anything that feels a little bit symbolic of like, okay, now I've written this and now the energy has alchemized. So that's step 3. I think is really important to forgive them. Step 4 is even harder, guys. And so again, I'm telling you, we're going step after step, layer after layer. We're really layering, intertwining things, okay? Step 4 is even harder than step 3, and it's forgiving yourself. Because it gets to a point when I really say that all of these steps are intertwining and they're layer after layer after layer, it's because when you're healing, you realize certain things at different moments in time, right? And it gets to a point in the healing journey when you've forgiven them, you're like, okay, I've forgiven them, like I feel better, la 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 la. But you still have this thing in your heart being like, okay, I've done all of this, cool, I've forgiven them, la la la, but like, why did I let this happen in the first place? And then you start seeing all of the things that happened in your relationship that right now in the new state that you're in, and the new things that you've learned in your mind, like your new self that you've stepped in, you kind of start to think to yourself, hey, why is it that I've allowed this person to treat me this way 3 times in a row? That's not okay. And obviously now that's led to them breaking up with me, or like led to the breakup, la 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 la. But you get to a point where you start to be like, hey, hold the phone. Actually, if all of this happened, a lot of this is because I ignored red flags. I ignored to voice my concerns at a certain point in time. I actually had this feeling in my heart from the beginning that this relationship was not going to work, but I shut it down time and time and time again. And then a year afterwards, I was the one that got hurt. Because you start to have these things of like, goodness gracious, actually, I have a responsibility as well in this breakup. And forgiving yourself for that is also difficult, because obviously you've been through a lot of pain, and a lot of the times it's a lot easier to forgive somebody else than forgive yourself, right? But the thing with that is to realize that you did what you did with the best of your knowledge at the time, right? The reason why now you're in a state of like, goodness, I would never accept this again. Like, how did somebody treat me like that? And I didn't say anything. That's complete bollocks. Like, the only reason why you're in a state where you can even say that, it's because you've gone through the breakup. It's because you've learned a lot of things. It's because you've processed. It's because you've reflected, you've journaled, you've done all of these things. And that's why now you're in a place where you can be like, oh God, was not okay. I'm never accepting that again. And then you kind of, in hindsight, start looking at yourself like, why did you ever accept this past me? Why did you ever do this? You would have never been hurt in the first place if you had just left on week 3. But the thing is, you have to realize that you would never be here. You would never think the way you think. You would never know all of these things if you had left on week 3. Because at that point you didn't know, and you had to learn these things, right? And so it's really, really important that when you forgive yourself, really think about the fact that you've acted in your best interest at the time. And yes, your best interest has now changed. Your mind has now changed. What you know, what you understand, what you appreciate has now changed. And so now you would act differently with the same situation. But at the time, that's all you knew, and that's all you were like, no, like that feels right. That's exactly what feels good to me at the time, right? So please be nice to yourself. I know this is not an easy process. I think, forgiving myself was a little bit difficult, definitely in this healing journey. But I also was like, you know what, Helen, like I've done the best that I could at the time. And now I just have to trust that now that I know all of these things, I'm not going to act the same way. I'm not going to accept the same things at all. And so the next relationship will be a lot better. But yeah, whatever you need to do for step 4 to forgive yourself, please do it. But remember that like you acted in your best interest. You didn't want to hurt you in the process of it at all. Like now you know that obviously these actions led to you being hurt, but at the time you didn't. So give yourself some grace. Step 5, I'm going to call it, take yourself out of the breakup matrix. And what I mean by that is a lot of the times when you're in the thick of a breakup and you're always looking at it from one specific angle, right? You're looking at it, and that's kind of tied to the step before, forgiving yourself, but you're looking at it from one very, very specific angle of like, he did that to me, she did that to me, he's the one that like is responsible for this, he cheated, he, treated me poorly, he didn't do whatever the situation is. Whatever the situation is. So a lot of the times we start the healing journey by pointing the finger. You did this, you did this, you did this, la la la. But at one point in time, you're going to have to point the finger back to yourself and be like, okay, it takes 2 to be in a relationship. It takes 2 to stay in a relationship, and it takes 2 to leave. Okay? A relationship is a couple is 2 people. Okay? So yes, this person probably treated me badly. Yes, this person did this, they did that, la la la. But what was your role in this? What did you do? What are your patterns that have been highlighted, have been like, put under a spectacle and under a light bulb during this breakup? What can you learn about yourself through this relationship? Is it that you have an anxious attachment style? Is it that you're an avoidant attachment style? Is it that you have very low self-esteem, or you have very low confidence, that you always feel like the person with you is going to like run away and like cheat on you and like, anything like that? Is it that you actually don't trust people, and you like never were able to lean into trusting the person you were with, which led them to actually like, running away or doing whatever? What is it in this relationship that you can actually sit back and be like, you know what, that part of the relationship ending was my fault, or that part of the relationship lasting this long, it was my fault because I should have voiced my concerns. Maybe you're somebody that like never voices anything. You let everybody step over all of your boundaries. So maybe all of these things has happened. And so it's time as well during a breakup. It's kind of like an audit period, right? sit down with yourself and start thinking a little bit, okay, what is it in this breakup that is as well my responsibility? And what is it from this breakup that I can learn to let go, or that I can learn about myself so that I come into my next relationship in a much more healed version of myself, in a version of myself that's a lot more conscious and aware of some of my patterns. Because you know what, like there's this quote that says, oops, sorry, my Mac is about to die. Let's not do that. Because there's this quote that says that everything is unconscious until it becomes conscious. Okay? And so I don't remember whose it's from. I'll probably put it in the bio, in the description. But so everything is unconscious until it becomes conscious, okay? So until you realize your own unconscious patterns, until you realize the ways that you act that are not ideal to maintain a healthy relationship, then they're unconscious to you. And then the moment you realize them, which oftentimes you realize them in times of hardship, so breakups, things like that, then they become conscious. And now that they're at the top of your mind, now that they're like in the part of your mind that you can actually control and understand, and it's more tangible to you, now you can do something about it. And now you can be like, okay, I have an anxious attachment style. How do I try to work on that? How do I try to, I want to say fix, because we're not people that just need to be fixed all the time, but like, how can I heal that a little bit? How can I work on that to move a little bit more towards a secure attachment style? Because the moment you become aware of that, now you can be like, okay, I'm acting out of my anxious attachment style right now. And I know I can feel that that's not how I want to act. I don't know exactly how it is that I want to act, because I don't know how secure feels like, but I know that I'm not acting from a place that's fully healthy. And you can communicate that with your new partners and stuff like that. So the moment things become conscious, it's a lot more, it's a lot easier to like work on them and heal them. So a lot of the times breakups, they bring things to the surface, and they bring things to the surface about your own patterns and your own ways of doing things. And so that's why this is like step 5, because obviously you've done a lot of work already, and now you're diving even deeper. It's really like this process of like, okay, you were a duo. You chose to focus on yourself. You chose to do all this work on yourself and focus on you, find your new goals, find who you are a lot more. Then you're forgiving them, then you're forgiving yourself. Then you're like, okay, now that I've done all of these things, what is it that I now can do? What is it that I now like, what has come up to the surface that I know I was responsible for and that I actually want to work on? Because if I hadn't gone through this breakup, I wouldn't have noticed that actually I was always acting in this way that is not super conducive to a healthy relationship. So that's step 5. I'm now going to like kind of have like a step 5.5, because it's not really a step. It's just talking through a little bit some of the healing modalities that you can use to heal from a breakup, that a lot of the things that I've like found out when I was going through my own breakup that I just want to walk you guys through, because I think a lot of the times a bad breakup can become a trauma. It can become something that we hold in our bodies and then prevent anybody else from any other romantic partner to, be in our space. We can now then reject long-term partnership, reject romance and things like that, because we're so scared of getting hurt again. So I'm just going to read out a few things that I wrote here. So one of the first thing is, what is meant for you won't miss you. So if you and your ex are meant to get back together, you will get back together. Again, you're not going to get back together if both of you don't go through the whole healing modalities and work on yourself and forgive yourself and forgive them and all of that jazz that I've talked about. But what is meant for you won't miss you. So whatever it is that's coming next for you, the next relationship, if it's with your ex or with somebody else, will be better, and it will not miss you. Okay, it's not gonna like pass you by. That's not how life works. It will just not pass you by. So that's something that I think I held on to a lot at the beginning of the breakup. Another thing is like every new beginning has to start with an ending, and I think that was also one of those things that gives you hope. Okay, I'm going through this really, really tough, horrific thing, but every new beginning has to start with an ending. So it means that I'm at the ending bit right now, and it means that I'm on the cusp of beginning something new, something more beautiful, something more aligned with who I want to be, something that feels better to myself. And so that really helped me as well, to be like, okay, I'm at the start of this journey, and the journey has to start with an ending. So I'm going through the ending, but then after it's the beginning, and the beginning is probably going to be beautiful and all of that. So that helped me. Another thing that I told myself quite a lot was that, whatever's coming next is much better than what you had. So kind of sitting down with this inner knowing of like, okay, you're doing all of this work. You're bringing a lot of unconscious things to your conscious mind, and you're working through all of these things, and you're healing, and you're doing all of that. you can almost have the certainty that whatever is coming next is 1,000 times better than what you had. Because think about all of the things, all of the unconscious things that have risen to the surface through this breakup, that you've now, from step 2, have chosen to focus on yourself, chosen this healing journey. So now, you know, things come up to the surface and you're like, okay, I'll pick this up, I'll unpack it, I'll figure out what this means, I'm going to start to work on this, la 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 la. And so you've obviously become a better person, you've become a better version of yourself. And so what's coming next is a lot better, 1,000 times better, for sure. The other thing is the universe, God, whoever you believe in, does not give you battles that you can't handle. Okay, whatever's happening to you right now is something that you have the tools within yourself, even though you can't see them, even though it feels like the world is ending, even though you're crying every day, all of these things. The universe does not give you something that you don't have within yourself, the tools, however hidden they are, the tools to combat that and work through it. Okay, a lot of life and a lot of going through life is just reframing your mindset and mindset shifts, right? Like, yes, you can decide to be like, oh, life is unfair, it's horrific, why is it happening to me? Yeah, you can live like that. You can decide to do that. But you can also decide to be like, okay, this has happened. Now what do I do with this? If this has happened to me, surely it means that I have the tools, or I can learn the tools to work through this and to combat this battle. Because if not, it wouldn't be happening to me, because it would be happening to somebody else that has the tools. But if it's happening to me, it means that I, within myself, have the tools to battle this, to combat this. The other 2 things that I think you can tell yourself a lot of the times, kind of like mantras as well, is like, I trust that this is working for me. I trust that this is working for me. I trust that this is working for me. And that I trust that this is for the best. I trust that this is for the best. I trust that this is for the best. Okay. The other thing, apart from reminding yourself of a few different things and having those sort of thought processes in your mind, is you can do a lot of journaling as well. I've done a lot of that when I was going through my breakup. Actually, I have, so people that are not watching on YouTube, sorry, but I have this journal. Well, I have a pink one that's actually behind me on my piano, and legitimately almost half of that journal is filled with breakup notes. And so I had to buy a new one, the purple one, for just other things, because now I journal a lot less about my breakup because I feel a lot better. But the different types of journaling that you can do are the just stream of consciousness, just to vent out your thoughts on a page, see what comes up, just like a word vomit, but in word format. You can do that. You can also start journaling and thinking about why are there different reasons as to why it didn't work out. It'll also be useful reminding yourself that if the breakup happened, obviously your partner had a reason for it, but you as well. You might not have a reason as to the way it ended, obviously not, because sometimes people make decisions that are just their own to carry. But if it ended, it must mean that there's something in there that you have to learn, something in there that you also are learning through this. It's not just the other person that gets to learn through this experience. So journaling about these specific things as well, trying to figure out what is it that I've done, what is it that I can learn from this, can be quite helpful. So asking yourself, you can write 5 things I've learned from this breakup, and you can write that, or things that I've learned about myself, things that I've learned about myself in a context of a relationship. You can write about that. So just anything that comes up. Then you can also just do normal journaling. How do I feel today? You can do that. What can I do for myself today that will make this day feel a little bit better, a little bit brighter? So these are other types of journaling you can do. And then the other thing is practicing gratefulness. Now more than ever, especially if you're going through a breakup, just reminding yourself that however tough the season of life is, again, it's just a season. It'll change, like everything. Nothing in life is constant. If it's up, then it's going to go down. If it's down, then it's going to go up. Literally nothing in life is constant. And just reminding yourself that even if you're in a down right now, you're in an ebb of life, there's still things to be grateful for. There will always be something to be grateful for. Always. You're still breathing. That's to be grateful for. So that's the different journaling practices that you can have. The other thing that I think really helped was using art modalities. So dancing, singing, painting your feelings out. I'm going to do a full podcast about this at some point because I think it's really, really important to talk about that. Again, another thing you can do is venting. If you feel safe to do so in an environment, you can vent to your family, to your friends, to yourself, all of these different things. Another thing to heal, please stop looking at their socials. There's no point. The only thing that will happen through that is pain. I know we all do it. I know, la verdad, I know that we all do it. We all go through that. We all want to see, what is he up to? What is she up to? Like, we all do that. But it's not for the best. So as much as you can, try to refrain from these things. Another thing as well that I think is really important is to accept your feelings as they come. Right? Don't hold things in. If you start to feel like, okay, I'm about to cry because I feel quite sad, let yourself cry. Obviously, if possible, but, don't hold your feeling in and just like be like, okay, it's fine, I'm doing great. No, if you're feeling sad, feel sad. For example, for me, when I went to Madrid the second day, I cried for the whole morning. So from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I was crying. And I was just letting go of another feeling that had come up, that had never come up in this whole healing journey. It just randomly popped up in my mind, and I was crying for hours about it, and I just let myself be. I let myself stay in the hotel, and I was like, yeah, I am losing 6 hours of my time in Madrid, but also this is what feels like I need to get done right now, so I'm going to do that because I don't want to have to deal with this later. I'm going to deal with it as it comes. We're going to think about it now and release it immediately. I don't want to have it stay in me for too long. The other thing you can do is like guided meditations or like silent meditation. So sit with yourself for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20, whatever, and just close your eyes and just let your thoughts be, let them like flow through you and out. So that can help. Or guided meditations as well. I use the Superhuman app, but there's a lot of different apps out there. There's Balance, there's Calm. So anything like that can also be helpful in the SOS moment of like when things are super, super painful, super raw still. And then another thing that I think is quite nice is to maybe find an activity that you enjoy that you can commit yourself to. So going to the gym, running, posting on social media, if that was something you've always wanted to do, is to start like a social media business, like just committing to something that you can do to distract yourself a little bit, but that ultimately is good for you. That's another thing you can do within that sort of SOS period for healing. And then the last thing that I discovered was EFT tapping. So I'll talk about this as well in another episode, but it's like this modality where like you're tapping on different meridian points of your body that connect with your amygdala, which is the place of the brain that processes emotions. And so you're kind of listening to a video that's telling you different things at the same time you're tapping, and it's kind of like integrating. Like, so it's this here, just above your lips, underneath your chin, next to your collarbones, underneath your armpit and above your head, and then as well on the side of your wrist, on the side of your hand. So these are kind of modalities that you can use as well. So there's videos online of like EFT tapping on a lot of different like topics. So like for happiness, for feeling better, for morning gratefulness, for money making, for anything like that. So I would definitely recommend you do something like that as well, because that actually really helped me a lot. Like when I was traveling and it was still really, really acute at the time, I would do EFT tapping like every day. I was tapping every single morning, just tapping my feelings away, and that was like really, really useful. I still do that actually sometimes, but like not as much because it's not as acute. And then when you start to feel better, the stuff that I would recommend doing, obviously maintain all of the things that work for you in the kind of SOS part, but the things you can add when you're starting to feel better is in the journaling, is like really diving a lot deeper now into what was your part of responsibility in this relationship, quote unquote, failing, or in this relationship ending? How are you actually feeling right now? Are you actually still sad? Or are you just more in a state of like, I'm not sad anymore, but I just am scared of being alone, so now I'm trying to find somebody else? Like trying to be really, really honest with yourself. Like, how is it that you're actually feeling? What can you see now that you couldn't see before? That's something else that you could journal on. What did you allow at the time in the relationship that now you wouldn't allow anymore? What did you accept that was unacceptable? Were you being true to yourself in this relationship? So these are all things that you can journal on when you're starting to feel better. Another thing as well is journaling on kind of like an audit of your life. As I said in the beginning of this video, of this podcast, when you're going through a breakup, you're now single, you have oftentimes, especially if you're this young, you have no responsibilities, you have less responsibilities, you don't have to take care of somebody else's feelings and stuff like that. So you can audit your life. So you can ask yourself questions about that, like, who was there for you in this tough time? Who are the people in your life that showed up, that stepped up, that vented with you, that held your hand, that cried with you, that held you? Who are these people that you actually would want to thank and be like, wow, like these are actually true friends because they stepped up in a moment of deep, deep need for me? Who is it that's still there? who didn't show up for you and you thought they would have. And then you can also ask yourself questions about like your purpose, about your different goals, about where you want your life to be headed right now. So these are all like things that you can journal on as well when you're going through a breakup and you're starting to feel a little bit better. And at this point, you can also obviously continue guided meditations and like focus them less on like heartbreak things and more on like just general you wanting to feel better in your life and working on the different things that actually have shown up for you. If you've realized, oh God, like I'm an anxious attachment, then you can start trying to meditate on that or listen to podcasts that will help you navigate through this and help you slowly but surely move through more of a secure attachment. So it's one of those things that like when you've started all of those healing modalities and you start to feel better, then you can now start healing other parts of yourself that have shown up that were as an issue, as something to look at through the breakup, has become conscious like that. Now we're moving to step 6, which is the penultimate step, which is actually the fun part. That's the fun bit of the video. It's actually now time to manifest. It's the time, like you've done all of this work. And obviously all of this is, again, as I said, intertwined. It's not like, oh, you're step 1 and then you're moving on to step 2 and you're never going back to feeling and grieving. That's not how it works. But when you get to like a point when you feel ready to move on to step 6, which is the fun bit, now you get to manifest. You get to manifest a new partner and create a new list of things that you want out of a relationship. Because now that you've grown so much, now that you've learned so much about yourself, now that you've processed so many things, are working through and unpicking so many different things about yourself and your patterns and stuff like that, now you get to like put on a paper and be like, okay, what is it that I want out of the partner now? And so that's the fun bit of like doing a little bit of the list of like your ideal partner list. That's not that difficult to do. Just take out a notepad, write anything down that you feel resonates with you. And you might realize actually, if you then compare your list pre this breakup to your list now, that a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed priority. And that's also quite a beautiful process, because you wouldn't get this super refined list of what it is that you actually want out of a relationship if you didn't go through that breakup. So again, there's a lot of things to be grateful for in a breakup. And then the last step is reminding you that healing is not linear, that it's a process, and that everything is linked, everything is intertwined, and that you move from step to step, but then you move back a lot of the times. So you might move to step 6 and feel like, oh my gosh, I got to manifest my dream partner, la la la, it was really fun. I wrote down all of these little things, kind of started daydreaming a little bit about what it would be like to be in a new relationship in this context and a much healthier context, la la la. But 3 days later, you're feeling sad again, and then you have to grieve another aspect of of your past relationship. So really giving yourself some grace and realizing that healing is not a linear process. Obviously, I'm writing this in a step-by-step format because that's how I think they show up. That's how you would first go through step 1, then step 2, then step 3. But it doesn't mean that when you're ready for step 3, you're fully done dealing with step 1 at all. It's just that they show up. Like you get ready for different steps at different times, but it doesn't mean that the moment you move to a different step, then you've finished working on the step before that. It's not because you've now moved on to step 3 and you're ready to forgive them that you don't have to remind yourself that it's time to focus on you, or that you now don't have anything else to grieve or to feel, if that makes sense. So just reminding yourself, being nice and gentle to yourself, that things will move around. Healing is really not it's not a linear process. You know, I'm sat here 3 months into this breakup and feeling a lot better, but I know that I might have a day or two where I'm going to feel down, but the things that show up now are completely different than what showed up a month ago. The healing that is showing up is very different, but it still goes up and down. So yeah, I feel really like my throat feels super dry. Let me just get a little bit of like tea and I'll be back in a second. I think that was the end of my video. I really hope that it was helpful to you. If you've made it till the end, thank you. I really hope that I was able to explain to you this sort of like intangible, complex, difficult breakup process in a bit more of a digestible manner. All of this is coming from my own experience and what has worked for me in my breakup. And again, it might not work for you, but I really feel that there is something in here for every single person that has gone through a breakup or is going through a breakup, because I really do feel your pain. I really do. Going through a breakup is tough. And so I'm really sending you guys a lot of my love, a lot of my like strength, and really hoping that this video was something to help you in this journey, something to help you in this process to healing, to feeling better, to feeling ready to love again, or just ready to just step into the singleness of your life and properly enjoying it and not running around trying to not be single. So yeah, I poured my heart into this. I feel a little empty now. So if you did enjoy this video, if you did enjoy this podcast, please like this video, share this video, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my podcast, leave a review on my podcast as well if that helped you. And I am going to go. I am going to drink. I'm going to replenish my energy because I really poured everything I had into this. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys for listening. And I'll see you guys soon for another podcast episode. This podcast really truly is my safe space. So I'm so glad that you get to join me on this journey. So yeah, guys, I'm off. Thank you very much for watching and for listening. I'm now getting super awkward and doing this weird voice. So I'm going to go. Bye, guys.